I never thought that night would become the most terrifying night of my life. It was around 11 p.m. The outside world was eerily silent, with even the faint chirping of crickets fading into the background. I was sitting in the living room, sipping a cup of warm coffee while watching some random TV show. My house, though modest in size, always felt cozy. But that night, it was different. Something felt off, like the air in the house was heavier than usual. A sudden downpour began, the heavy rain drumming on the roof in a steady rhythm. I pulled the blanket over myself as a chill crept through the room. Then, breaking the monotony of the rain, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. I froze, straining my ears. The knock came again, louder this time. I glanced at the clock. Who would come here this late, and in this weather? Rising from the couch, I cautiously approached the door. My heart thudded louder with each step. Peering through the peephole, I was greeted by nothing but darkness. There was no one there. "Who's there?" I called out, trying to sound more confident than I felt. No response. Only the rain answered me, its relentless patter filling the silence. I took a step back, an uneasy feeling clawing at my chest. Before I could even turn around, the knock came again. This time it was rapid and desperate, as if someone urgently needed to get inside. Without thinking, I swung the door open. But there was no one. The hallway outside was completely empty, and the rain continued pouring without mercy. I stepped out briefly, glancing left and right, but there was no sign of anyone. Then, as I turned to face my door again, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A wet handprint on the door. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my heart pounding against my ribs. Returning to the couch, I tried to shake the unease settling over me. I told myself it must have been my imagination, or perhaps a prank by some kid in the building. But then, the knocking came again. This time, it wasn't from the front door. It was from the window in the living room. I froze in place. The knocking was softer this time, but somehow more unsettling. Slowly, I turned to face the window, the thick curtains blocking my view of what was outside. My breath hitched as I noticed a faint shadow cast on the curtain. It looked like the silhouette of a person, but something was wrong. The figure was unnaturally tall, its head tilted at an odd angle, as though observing me. I stood there, paralyzed, my mind racing. Who, or what, was outside my window? "Who's there?" I finally managed to say, my voice trembling. The shadow didn't respond. It simply stayed there, motionless. I felt a surge of fear and adrenaline. With a shaky hand, I grabbed the edge of the curtain and yanked it open. Nothing. There was no one outside. The window pane was empty, reflecting only my own frightened face. But then I saw it, a wet handprint smeared across the glass. I stumbled backward, my hands trembling. The realization hit me like a cold wave. Someone, or something, had been there. Pulling the curtains shut again, I sat on the couch, clutching the blanket tightly around me. I tried to calm myself, but the night had other plans. Knock, knock, knock. This time, the sound came from the kitchen. I whipped my head toward the darkened kitchen. The knock was unmistakable, louder than before. My chest tightened as fear threatened to paralyze me completely. I grabbed the flashlight from the coffee table, gripping it as though it could shield me from whatever was lurking in the shadows. "Who's there?" I called out, but my voice cracked. No answer. Step by step, I moved toward the kitchen, the faint beam of the flashlight illuminating my path. The kitchen was pitch black, the overhead light having burned out days ago. When I reached the doorway, I stopped. The air felt heavier in there, colder. I shone the flashlight around the room. The beam swept over the sink, the countertops, the dining table. Everything seemed normal at first. Then I saw it. The back door, which I had locked earlier, was slightly ajar. My stomach dropped. I stepped closer, the beam of light trembling as much as my hands. I was sure I had locked that door. But before I could inspect it further, the door suddenly slammed shut with a deafening bang. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. The sound reverberated through the house, followed by an eerie silence. And then I heard footsteps. They weren't coming from outside. They were inside the kitchen. Fear gripped me as I swung the flashlight toward the source of the sound. My breath caught when the light fell on a figure standing at the far end of the room. It was the same tall figure I had seen at the window. Its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and its body seemed to twitch ever so slightly, as though it wasn't used to standing still. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I could only watch as it slowly started moving toward me. Its footsteps were heavy, deliberate, the sound echoing in the silence. My instincts finally kicked in. I bolted out of the kitchen, racing toward the front door. My hands fumbled with the locks, but I managed to open it and ran out into the hallway, not daring to look back. I don't remember how long I ran that night. By the time I returned to my house the next morning, sunlight had already flooded the streets. Everything looked normal, almost too normal. But when I stepped inside, I found something waiting for me on the coffee table. It was a note written in jagged, uneven handwriting. It read, "I'll be back."